I've never been one to fuss over my health. A life in construction has taught me to work through pain, not complain about it. It was a Tuesday in late September when I first felt it. A small, tender bump below my left ear as I shaved, probably just a swollen lymph node. I muttered, rinsing my razor. I'd had them before. I shrugged it off, grabbed my coffee, and left for work all day. A dull ache nagged at my neck, but I ignored it. By afternoon, the lump felt warmer and had grown to the size of a marble. I told myself it was just inflammation, or maybe a bug bite from working near the river. That night, watching TV, the pain turned sharp. For a second, I thought I felt something shift under my skin. I froze, then laughed. "You're losing it, Reynolds," I muttered, probably just a muscle twitch. Still, I slept fitfully, waking to a throbbing neck. By morning, the skin was red, tight, and glossy. When I pressed it, pain shot to my collarbone. I thought about going to the clinic, but the idea of a crowded waiting room didn't appeal. Besides, my crew was counting on me. I took 2 ibuprofen, put on my jacket, and went to work. The ache was a constant throb by midday, and I kept touching the lump. It felt larger and warmer each time. That evening, I saw in the mirror that it had grown to the size of a golf ball. The skin was flushed, and I thought I saw the faintest ripple across it. Something about it made me uneasy. I didn't call the hospital, but I left my phone on the counter with the ER number on the screen. That night, I felt it shift again, slow and deliberate, like something alive. I lay awake, my pulse racing. By morning, I knew I had to go. I pulled into St. Luke's as the sun rose. Sweat gathered on my neck, not from the cold but from the feverish heat of the swelling. I sat in my truck for a moment, watching people come and go, trying to convince myself this was necessary. I've always hated hospitals. The smells, the sounds, the feeling of being trapped. But the lump was bigger now, tight and glossy, and that crawling sensation had returned. I finally went inside. The waiting room was a mix of quiet talk and TV noise. The receptionist, a woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile, handed me a clipboard. Name, date of birth, and what brings you in today. I paused. Swelling on my neck. Been getting worse. Feels weird. She glanced at it, her expression tightening slightly before she nodded. "We'll get you triage right away." Soon, a nurse in navy scrubs led me to a bay. She took my vitals, slightly elevated, and pressed gently around the swelling with gloved fingers. "Tender here." I winced. "Yeah, and I know this sounds nuts, but sometimes it feels like it moves." Her eyes met mine briefly before returning to the lump. She didn't comment, just made a note. "Dr. Cole will be in shortly." When Dr. Hannah Cole stepped in, she carried a calm, deliberate energy, tall, with dark hair and a tight bun. She greeted me with a firm handshake. "Mark, I'm Dr. Cole. Let's take a look." She examined the swelling, her brow furrowing slightly. "How long has this been here?" "Couple days. Got bigger fast. Hurts more now, and sometimes it feels like there's something inside." She didn't laugh or dismiss it. Instead, she reached for a portable ultrasound unit. "Let's get some images. I want to see what we're dealing with before we make any decisions." I laid back as she applied cool gel to my neck. The probe pressed gently, and a black and white image flickered on the monitor. At first, I saw only static shapes. Then Dr. Cole adjusted the angle, and something elongated and faintly curved appeared in the center of the mass. It shifted. My breath caught. "Did you see that?" Her voice was calm, but her eyes stayed fixed on the screen. "Yes, I saw it." She set the probe down and peeled off her gloves. "We're going to need to take care of this today." The words hung heavy and final. The gel felt cold against my feverish skin. Dr. Cole moved the probe slowly, the room quiet except for the hum of the machine and a distant heart monitor. The screen showed grainy, shifting tissue. She adjusted the angle, pressed deeper, and a shadow appeared. Thin, elongated, slightly curved. "What is that?" She zoomed in. The image sharpened. The shape was nestled in a fluid pocket, and then it moved again. A slow, deliberate shift. "You saw that, right?" "I saw it," she said quietly, her voice low. She froze the image. "This isn't a typical abscess. There's something inside the cavity. I can't confirm what it is until we remove it, but it's organic and moving on its own." A cold rush spread through me. "You mean like a bug?" She didn't flinch. "We'll know soon. But whatever it is, It needs to come out today." She wiped the gel away and set the probe aside. "I'm going to prep a procedure room. We'll numb the area, make a small incision, and extract whatever is in there. It's straightforward, but we need to act quickly." I nodded, my throat tight. I'd expected antibiotics, maybe a quick drainage, not having something alive pulled from my neck. As Dr. Cole stepped out to make arrangements, I sat on the exam table, staring at the frozen ultrasound image. The shadow in the center seemed to stare back. The hallway to the procedure room smelled of antiseptic and something metallic. My boots squeaked on the linoleum as I followed Dr. Cole, each step echoing in the quiet. Inside, the room was small and painfully bright under surgical lamps. A stainless steel tray stood ready, lined with scalpels, forceps, gauze, and syringes. A nurse in blue scrubs moved efficiently, draping a sterile sheet over the table. "Have a seat here," Dr. Cole said. I climbed onto the table, the paper crinkling under me. The nurse swabbed my neck with cold, stinging antiseptic. "You'll feel a quick pinch," she said. The needle slid in, followed by a spreading numbness that dulled the pain to a distant throb. Dr. Cole adjusted the light, angling it directly on the lump. "We'll make a small incision, drain the fluid, and remove whatever's inside. It should be quick. You might feel some tugging, but no sharp pain." I nodded, my throat dry. My eyes flicked to the scalpel, its blade so fine it seemed almost invisible. The nurse placed a metal basin nearby. Its clink made my stomach tighten. A heart monitor beeped steadily in the background, syncing with my pulse. Dr. Cole pulled on fresh gloves. "All right, Mark," she said, meeting my eyes. "Let's find out what we're dealing with." The room shrank around me. The light was blinding, the air cool. I heard the rustle of gloves, the whisper of instruments. Then, with the scalpel poised above my skin, the world narrowed to a single point. The surgical light bore down like a miniature sun. I fixed my eyes on the ceiling tiles, counting perforations to keep from spiraling. Dr. Cole's voice was calm. "All right, Mark, you're numb. You might feel pressure, maybe some tugging, but no sharp pain." The scalpel touched my skin, not a sting, just a strange cold pressure. A faint sound followed, like tearing wet paper as she made the incision. My jaw tightened as I felt the vibration of her movements more than the cut itself. A thin stream of cloudy fluid trickled out first, carrying a faintly sour, metallic smell. The nurse dabbed it away quickly. Then Dr. Cole paused. "There it is," she murmured. I couldn't see, but I felt it. A subtle, alien shift deep under my skin, as if something had just realized it was being disturbed. With fine forceps, she reached into the incision. There was a moment of resistance, a faint pull that made my stomach clench, and then it slid free. The nurse gasped quietly. Dangling from the forceps was a pale, segmented larva about an inch long, its body curling and uncurling slowly. Tiny hooks at its head glistened under the light. Dr. Cole dropped it into a clear specimen jar with a soft clink. It writhed against the glass, leaving smears of fluid as it twisted. I turned my head just enough to see it. My breath caught. "That was in me, yes," Dr. Cole said evenly, sealing the jar. "And it's out now. You did great." The nurse flushed the wound with cool saline as Dr. Cole inspected the cavity, then closed the incision with 2 neat stitches. The jar sat on the tray, the creature inside still moving, unwilling to accept its eviction. I couldn't look away. The throbbing in my neck was gone, replaced by a cold, crawling awareness that something had been feeding and growing inside me. Later, in the pathology lab, the jar sat beaded with condensation under harsh lights. The larva moved sluggishly inside. A lab technician transferred it to a dissecting tray. "We'll run a full ID," he said quietly, "but I've got a pretty good guess already." I watched from a stool nearby, my neck bandaged and aching dully. My eyes kept drifting back to the jar, needing to see it to believe it was truly out. The technician leaned under a magnifying lens. "Yep, Dermatobia hominis, human botfly larva, nasty little hitchhiker." I frowned. "Botfly? I've never even been out of the country." Dr. Cole stepped closer. "You don't have to be. Their eggs can be carried by mosquitoes or other biting insects. You mentioned camping near the river last week." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, got bit up pretty bad. That's likely when it happened," she said. "A mosquito-carrying botfly eggs bit you. One entered through a scratch or bite, hatched under your skin, and started feeding. Yours was already close to full size." The technician sealed the larva in a preservative-filled container. We'll keep it for the hospital's teaching collection. Cases like this are rare here. I let out a slow breath. So it's not dangerous anymore. Dr. Cole shook her head. Not now. We removed it completely, and you're on antibiotics to prevent infection. You'll heal fine. The only thing left is a small scar and a story most people won't believe. For the first time since walking into the ER, I felt the tension in my shoulders ease. The thing was gone, the mystery was solved, and yet, as I glanced one last time at the sealed container, I couldn't shake the thought that something like that had been alive inside me, and I never even knew until it was almost too late. The next morning, I woke in my own bed without that deep throbbing ache. The bandage itched a little, but compared to the crawling sensation, it was nothing. Sunlight spilled through the blinds, catching dust motes drifting in the air. I lay there listening to the hum of the refrigerator and a distant truck passing outside. It felt normal again. I took my first antibiotic pill with a glass of water, the bitter taste lingering. Dr. Cole's instructions echoed in my mind. Finish the full course. Keep the wound clean. Come back in 2 weeks. By the 3rd day, the swelling had gone down completely. The stitches were neat, the skin around them a healthy pink. I could turn my head without wincing. And the feverish heat was gone. When I stopped by the construction site, one of the guys noticed the bandage. What happened to you? He asked, half joking. I smirked. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. That night, over a beer at my kitchen table, I thought about the jar in the hospital lab. The pale segmented thing that had been living under my skin. The image was burned into my memory, but instead of fear, I felt something closer to gratitude. If I'd ignored it for another week, Dr. Cole said the infection could have spread into my bloodstream. I started making small changes, wearing long sleeves by the river, keeping insect repellent in my truck, checking any new bump instead of brushing it off. The scar was small, barely visible unless you knew where to look, but for me, it was more than a mark on my skin. It was a reminder, a warning, and in a strange way, a second chance. 2 weeks later, the October air carried the crisp scent of fallen leaves as I pushed open the glass doors of St. Luke's. The waiting room felt different this time. No tension, no fever, just a faint tug from the stitches ready to come out. Dr. Cole greeted me with the same calm smile. Let's take a look, she said, snapping on gloves. She peeled away the gauze and examined the neat line of healing skin. Perfect. No signs of infection. You'll barely have a scar. I exhaled, relief settling over me. Feels good to be done with it. She reached into a drawer and handed me a small padded envelope. I thought you might want this. Inside was a glossy printout of the ultrasound image frozen just before the extraction, and a photo of the preserved specimen in its jar. I chuckled, shaking my head. You're giving me nightmares on purpose. Dr. Cole smiled gently. Think of it as a reminder. Most people ignore symptoms until it's too late. You didn't. That's why you're sitting here healthy today. I slipped the photos back into the envelope and tucked it into my jacket pocket. Guess I've got a story for the rest of my life. As I left the hospital, the autumn sun felt warm on my face. The scar on my neck was small, almost invisible, but I could still feel it when I ran my fingers over the skin. A quiet, permanent mark of something that had once been alive inside me. Though the chapter was closed, the memory would always be there, sealed away like the jar in the lab. A month later, life had settled back into its familiar rhythm. Mornings were crisp, the Oregon air carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. I was back on the job site, shouting over the clang of hammers, the scar hidden beneath my flannel collar. Most days, I didn't think about what happened, but sometimes, when the sun hit just right and I caught my reflection, my fingers would drift to that small, smooth line, the only visible reminder. One Saturday, I drove back to the same riverbank where I'd camped before all this began. The water was low, stones warm from the sun. I stood there a long time, listening to the current, feeling the wind. This time, I wore long sleeves and insect repellent. It wasn't fear that brought me back. It was something closer to respect, respect for nature, for the fragility of the body, for the quiet ways life can change in an instant. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, I sat by a small campfire, sipping coffee from a dented metal mug. I thought about Dr. Cole's words. Most people ignore symptoms until it's too late. You didn't. I smiled. The story had become a favorite among my friends, retold around fires with added drama. But for me, It wasn't just a story. It was a reminder that listening to my instincts had saved me from something far worse. The fire crackled, the river whispered in the dark, and for the first time since that strange morning in front of the bathroom mirror, I felt completely at peace. The chapter was closed, the scar would fade, and life, good, ordinary life, would go on. That's all about our stories. Do you have any thoughts after hearing the story? Please share it in the comments below.